Hello friends! Today we're going to talk about a topic little discussed on this channel, and probably for good reason in the past, but now there has been a good reason for me to read some YA. So I'm going to share with you my discoveries, what I recommend, what I don't recommend. I've read 4 series, or 5 different authors, I think, in the past month. And I've done this because in recent times it has come to my attention that my design style would actually be quite well suited to YA. Case in point, books like this are not dissimilar to the kind of style that I work within, and also this one, another beautiful cover. These are both fairy tales or fairy tale retellings, and that's something that you see quite a lot of in YA, and it's something that I explore quite a bit in my work. So that is the reason for doing this. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of depth on the plots of these. I might highlight a few problematic issues that I had with some of them, but for the most part, if you want an overview of the plots of any of these, they're very easy to find on YouTube. I mean, BookTube is full of YA reviews, so that shouldn't be too difficult. But if you like my reviewing style and you like my book taste, then this might give you a good idea of what sort of YA books you might enjoy if you want to delve into this world, as I have. So without further ado, the first books that I read in this little adventure were The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater, and I haven't read any of her stuff before, although I've heard good things. And yeah, this was really enjoyable. I like her writing, I like the world that she's built, and it's very aesthetic and evocative and lots of natural imagery that I love. The magic is more kind of supernatural, I guess, than a strict magic system, but different aspects of this magical world are explored in different books of the cycle, and there's an overarching arc storyline that goes through the whole lot, or there are several really, and I thought that the characters were very engaging, well written, interesting backstories for all but one character, and I think this is a common issue in YA, is that the female protagonist is a little bit on the empty side, and I think that's partly done for a reason. I think that's partly because the reader is assumed to be kind of similar to her, somebody who's, the sort of, I guess, usual tropes of a YA heroine, quite quiet, doesn't have a lot of friends, often has kind of feminist politics, and that's certainly the case with Blue. She comes from a family of psychics, interesting aspect, and her family are certainly very interesting, but yeah, I just found her a little bit bland, and I think that's so that the reader can put themselves into her shoes and feel like she's being introduced to this world. I'm not a huge fan of that, and as much as I like protagonists who are sort of quiet and mousy and like reading books and don't have a lot of friends, and then find friends through the book, I just thought that she could have been explored a little bit further, certainly because the boys seem to have more backstory and more just more to them, basically. But there are a few times when Blue's politics come to the fore, and I don't feel as though there's enough of a punch there. And the one instance I'm thinking of is quite late in the books. I think it's in the 3rd one, it might be in the 2nd, but it feels a little bit late for her to be addressing the issues that she has, because she's in this group of boys, and so there is some misogyny going on. and there's a certain level of misogyny going on with the boys in general at the school that the Raven boys go to. So yeah, I just feel as though that could have been explored a little bit more and a little bit sooner. I mean, maybe she was trying not to alienate her audience by putting it in a bit later on. But yeah, anyway, for the most part, you know, this criticism doesn't, the amount of time I've spent criticizing it in this review does not reflect on my enjoyment of the book. I think I gave the series overall a 4 stars, maybe 4.5. Really enjoyable, beautiful prose, beautiful setting. Yeah, I'd recommend these, and I think, yeah, if you like the kinds of books that I like normally, then this would be my top recommendation for YA. But then the next series, just going to double check I've got my order right here. I think it was, yes, An Ember in the Ashes. So this is a series of 4, and 3 are out so far, so I read all 3, and it's by Sabaa Tahir. An Ember in the Ashes is set in an ancient Rome-like society. It's oppressive. We start off with a main character at this military camp where he's been training since he was a boy, and he's about to graduate. And he gets flung into this Hunger Games-like trial where there are 4 contestants and they have to prove themselves to become emperor, because the emperor has recently, has he died or abdicated, or for some reason he's going to be not on the throne anymore, so they need a new emperor. And then we have this other character who, at the very beginning of the novel, her brother is captured and her grandparents who looked after her are slaughtered by the guards, who are they're called the masks, and that's what the training academy is setting these young, mostly men, up to be these masks, these killing machines, basically. So she gets away and she goes to join the resistance and gets put into this camp, or this training academy, as a spy, and she ends up being quite close to the head honcho, the commandant, who is the overseer of the academy. And she is a fantastic character. She's horrible, absolutely just terrifying. Probably one of the scariest villains that I've read in a long while. So that's the first one. That's the setup at the beginning of the first one. And the second and third take quite different turns and go places that I wasn't expecting. It was really great. And we get some different perspectives as well in the second and third. So the first book is just from 2 perspectives. In terms of narrative, I thought the first book is the tightest, and the best arc, but the second ones are more interesting in terms of character and going into more depth on what's going on inside their minds, and there's more magic that happens as well, because this is fantasy, and there are some magical elements. So that's An Ember in the Ashes. I gave the first one 5 stars and the second 2 4, I think. Then I read some Leigh Bardugo. I started with A Six of Crows, which probably wasn't the best idea, although the writing in this one is better than the Grisha trilogy, which I read next. So Six of Crows is about a band of misfits who come together to perform this heist. Not my usual cup of tea, but they're an endearing bunch. Some I like more than others. They're all kind of unlikable but also likable, which is vague and unhelpful, I know. But I'm not usually a huge fan of that kind of genre. I read the Lies of Loch Lamora a few years ago, and quite like that, but it's not my first go-to for fantasy. But it gives you an interesting introduction to this world. So I decided after this first one to go and read the Grisha trilogy, which I'm glad I did actually. The first book is not as well done, I didn't think, as the subsequent two, mostly because there's a lot of setup. There's a lot to kind of get out of the way before the interesting stuff can happen, and that really starts in the second book and then the third. I was about to give something away and realised that maybe I shouldn't. Anyway, let me just say that there is a great villain in this. I won't say who this villain is, but a charismatic villain, and that's my favourite kind of villain, who does some problematic things, but seems to have more of a comeuppance than some of the problematic characters in books that I'm going to talk about shortly. That's probably all I can say without giving too much away. But in terms of plot, this is in this world where there are people called Grisha who are like witches or magicians. They can wield magic, and there are different types of magic. So different types of Grisha. And we have Elena, who is just an ordinary mortal girl, and then it comes to light that she is, I guess, the chosen one of this series, but she's also she's got these powers that she didn't realise she had, and that makes her both very vulnerable and very dangerous. And I think especially in the second and third ones, there's a great emphasis on how she's taking this massive change to her life and the struggles that she's going through. It's certainly not easy for her, and I like that she's a flawed character. She's not your sort of perfect protagonist, and has got a bit more depth to her than another protagonist I'm going to talk about a bit later. So those were good. Overall, I think I enjoyed the Grisha trilogy more than the Six of Crows duology. So that's Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. But I was glad I read them like that and went back and read the Crooked Kingdom book, because there is a little bit of crossover, which is kind of nice. But yeah, I'm looking forward to reading more of her stuff. I think her writing has improved over the course of her books. So at the end of Crooked Kingdom, that's where her writing is at its best, at its least developed at the beginning of the Grisha trilogy. So what did I read next? Oh yes, Children of Blood and Bone, which is quite different in that it's a world where I don't think there are any white people. At least we haven't heard of them yet in this world. So all of the characters have either very dark skin or I think to copper skin, and there is a bit of a hierarchy to do with the colour of the character's skin. But it's interesting to see that played out with, rather than it being about black and white. And it is an allegory for race relations in America, but it's played out in this fantasy world where magic used to exist, but now it has disappeared, and it's within living memory. I think it was 8 years before, I might be wrong, 8 or 10 years before, that magic disappeared. So the main quest of this book is to return magic to the world. And this is the first in a series as well. I really liked the writing of this, the characters. You've got a runaway princess, a runaway prince, and unlikely heroes from this village. And yeah, the character who we start with at the beginning is a fighter, and yeah, she's got a lot of oomph to her. So yeah, I thought the characterization was excellent. I enjoyed the writing, the world building, and I'm really interested to see what she does next. Yeah, I mean the arc of the story is relatively simple, but that's usually the way in a first book like this. So I think I gave it 4 stars. Yeah. So that was great, and I'm afraid it was all downhill from here. Then I read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and I read the second one as well. So the first one is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it tells of an ordinary girl who gets whisked away to the world of the Fae, and because of some seemingly arbitrary rule that's written in some treaty between the humans and the Fae. And yeah, the household is under a curse, all of that. There are some nice little references to Beauty and the Beast, nice little references to other fairy tales as well. I appreciated that, and myth too. Definitely liked that aspect of it. So great concept, and that's about as far as it went. So yeah, wonderful idea, but the way that it's executed is just disappointing, really. So this, I think it's marketed more as a fantasy fairy tale retelling, and what it really is a romance book with fairy tale elements. And this book has been criticised and is known for having much more sexually explicit material in there than the usual YA level. And I don't think that does it any favours. Although, I don't know, maybe without that it wouldn't sell so well, because it's not great. But I just think it's such a shame, because it was such a good idea. The writing is very, I would call it basic. Lots of opportunities for much more evocative writing, and they're not taken. But yeah, back to the relationships. So the relationships are the issues, not how explicit they are, but how glorified they are. And I found this especially in the first book, that the relationship between Feyre, who is the human who's taken, the beauty character, and the beast character, who's called Tamlin. Of course, they start falling in love, and he is very problematic. I mean, he locks her up, for starters, and he does some very questionable things. And I mean, she's not all that sensible, let's be honest. She's told to stay in her room because there's danger, and of course, what does she do? She goes into the woods instead. Although, in her defense, he doesn't tell her that, you know, what the danger is. He just says, "Stay in your room. Don't leave your room." Yeah, as a good captor would do. Yeah. So sorry, I've got a reflector here, and the sun has come out. It's suddenly very bright. But yeah, then she gets blamed for his problematic actions. I don't want to go into too many specifics because spoilers, but yeah, it's not very good. And I think that the main problem is that it's not only not very good in terms of, you know, it's a problematic relationship, but it's a romanticized problematic relationship, and that is one of the biggest problems I see in, well, that I think of when I think of YA. I'm thinking Twilight. But this is not so dissimilar to Twilight in terms of the dynamics between the main female character and the male characters. And also that she is a very bland character. Again, I think for similar reasons that Blue is quite a bland character. She doesn't seem to have many actual personality traits. She's hardworking, but apart from that, yeah, I just wanted a bit more, more psychological stuff going on with her. Yeah, I can't really go into too much more detail without spoiling the second book. But I'd say the second book turns into more of a Persephone retelling, which is another book, another story which involves captivity and an abusive relationship, basically, or a woman being held against her will. So yeah, it doesn't get much better in the second one. Admittedly, one of the characters who seems to be really quite problematic in the first becomes less so in the second, or at least it appears that he does. And then does he though? Does he? Anyway, spoilers, so I can't really talk too much about that. But there are a couple of really good reviews talking about the problematic aspects of these books, and I will link those down below, because I think, yeah, she does a very good job of looking at the specific instances in which there are issues. And it's very difficult for me to do that without doing spoilers, so and I want to keep this spoiler free. At the moment I am reading The Sea Witch by Sarah Henning, or just Sea Witch. It's a Little Mermaid retelling. So far quite good, I think. I haven't got very far into it, but the writing is already better than Sarah J. Maas's. Did I talk about the writing? It's not good. Yeah, I feel like I need a bit of a palate cleanser to listen to an audiobook that's has beautiful prose, maybe a recent Donna Tartt or something. Anyway, those were the YA books that I read in August and mostly enjoyed. If you have any recommendations for other YA books that I might like based on this, please let me know. And if you have any thoughts on any of the books that I've mentioned and want to discuss, please do so in the comments. I will be there to talk. I'm sure there'll be some people who disagree with me about Sarah J. Maas, but my issue with them is that I think they get held up as this kind of as these feminist books, and they're really not. They're really not. So maybe it's an issue of how they're presented, that they're presented as yeah, sort of feminist fairy tale retellings with fantasy, but really they're romance novels with problematic relationships. Comments down below, all of that, and yeah, if you want to follow me on Instagram and see if I actually come up with some covers that are suitable for these books for my portfolio, then you can follow me there. I am at Holly Dunn Design, and as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.